One of the things that Brother has been trying to impart to us in this group of lessons, this whole group of maybe 20 lessons, is that, well, first of all, fundamentally, there will be one awakening. There's not going to be a time when we get it and somebody else doesn't, and so therefore we will awaken and they won't. There is one awakening because the one consciousness is a fact. We are all part of a single consciousness. Every time I try to trap Brother and ask him, how does that really work? He keeps saying to me, when you approach this from the standpoint of the world you now see, based on differences and separateness, you'll never understand this. But once you accept the principle, the truth of the principle, that we are all connected, then you will see it could be no other way.
Tom? That's one of the aspects of it that's always kind of puzzled me, intrigued me, is that if you are fully saved or completely saved, then everyone is, it seems, in my reading.
Absolutely.
But Jesus already has accomplished that. So the only other kind of way for that, in my mind, to look at that, and that is that we are all saved. And it's already been completed.
Yeah.
But for some mysterious reason, we keep re-experiencing things that are already accomplished. Am I getting it kind of right?
It's a little thing called belief.
Belief.
And belief seems to control our reality. But in truth, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with it. Our belief has nothing to do with our reality. In fact, it has nothing to do with the world's reality. Everything has to be changed to fit. That's what perception does.
Yeah.
It alters everything, all of our intake, to fit our belief and make the world then seem real, and we seem a part of all of that.
We create what we want to see, perceive what we want to see.
Exactly
right?
so.
But I guess my puzzlement is, why would I want to create this or that?
Well,
yeah.
he tells us that when we find the reason, it'll immediately be gone.
Then it's gone. Oh. How do we find the reason?
That's what I'd like to have us talk about today.
Oh, good. Okay.
So in essence,
Yeah.
I've been contemplating the same thing, and it seems like, and I think this is what I hear being
Incidentally,
said.
that's not a coincidence. That's where the consciousness is. Just what we're describing here is where the consciousness is. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that this has already all happened, so the whole world that we're experiencing is already past, and we are all one as awakened presence. So I feel that's somehow what he means when he's saying that, is that and so that's why from this perspective we can't know it.
We don't.
But once we're free of that, in those awakened moments, suddenly all that's known is that oneness. And I think that's why everyone is there together. Absolutely everything, because that's the truth, is it's already there. And this was a blip that is already gone.
He says when you think about it from the perspective of oneness, then everything shifts.
Yeah.
So to me, the key is, how do I put myself in that position of thinking about it from the standpoint of our union, our oneness?
Yeah.
What might you guess?
Can you restate
Are you
the
asking
question?
us?
Can you restate the question again?
Let me pass this on around.
Steady, that's beautiful stuff.
Thank you.
Incredible. Yeah. I'm sorry.
What is the general theme that we have found throughout the course and the workbook and every other book in the Course in Miracles? What's the general theme? What is it based around? Forgiveness.
Love and forgiveness.
Yeah.
Forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two things to me.
Everything is based on forgiveness.
Separation versus is complete opposite, which is forgiveness.
So,
Right?
if I want to put myself in your position, in other words, the position of the real you, in the position of you and the real you, the first thing I have to do is think of myself in an entirely different way. The self I now see, the body self that I now see, is a self that we call ego, that is based upon everything that I believe. However, everything that I believe happens to be false. So I asked Brother then, what is the self I should see? And he said, your God self. Your God's. I'm always sitting here thinking, too frequently, thinking God self is, Holy Spirit is, God is something else, is not me. Not me, God self. But why? And then he asked me, why? That's a term that I think I coined, incidentally, God self. And I coined it because saying Holy Spirit made it seem too distant from me, and I wanted to feel more a part of it. So I called it God, the reality of self, which is me, God self, that's me. So he keeps reminding me. Why I coined this phrase, God self, is because that's who I really am. That's who we all really are. How? Or can you? Can you put yourself or think of yourself in a place of absolute oneness?
Of absolute what?
Oneness.
Oneness.
Well, the answer obviously is no. If we could, we would, and it'd all be done.
I think it's difficult because we attract into our minds thoughts that agree with what it is we already believe. Then we attract people into our lives who agree with us.
Yes.
And it just keeps this wheel turning and turning.
Yes.
Because we look at all that, all the thoughts that we're attracting, all the people we're attracting who agree with us, and we say, yeah, that's real. Which brings more of it to us. We got to get off the wheel.
It feels like somehow it's a step closer even to as much as I can in the moment remember and realize that everyone in my reality, like everything happening must be a projection of my own mind. So even if I can be one in that way, which we could say is egoic, right? Like looking at, okay, what's my ego creating? What world is my ego creating? And the people peopling that world. It's still that it's all me. It's all my...
I mean, that seems like another wheel. To me, that just seems like another wheel.
Well, it makes me reflect back on, like if I feel like I'm suffering something, and I take a look at, well, wait a minute, this must just be my own, somehow it can be, if I realize that and can see it, it can be retracted. And it seems to give way to a much clearer feeling that is loving, rather than being upset about whatever is happening or projecting it onto other people. So it's like the projection stops, I guess is what I'm saying. And that seems to give way to an openness. It feels more like a oneness with life instead of it being over there, right?
It's more like that, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Brother tells us, however, that we are not required to figure out the way to find God.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness. Otherwise, where are we going? He said, what you are required to do is be willing to find him. And when you are willing to find him, the means of finding him, of fulfilling your will come.
But still, to me, that still makes it not me. It's out there. Find him. Well, it's not him I'm finding. It's me I'm finding. So the idea of finding God is like, how many doors do I have to knock on to find God? Well, that's a crazy idea. So I just dropped the word God and put in love. And then my work is to find and express and be love. And it's not about some guy named God, which is a crazy idea.
It's more about some guy named Jim God.
God, I like that.
Kind of correlated with that is that, where's it here? God's love is the only thing there is. So I'm hearing you, when you said that, that's kind of what I'm hearing.
Is it like,
Yeah.
feels like it's like putting all of my eggs in one basket. We put all of our eggs in one basket, and the eggs being desire, one desire being God, being
Yeah.
truth,
Yeah, any other desire,
being that.
we will find
So
a way
risking
to
it
be.
all, really putting them all in one basket, not keeping, save some for later here or there in case it doesn't work out. It's got to all be that much
Are you
want
willing to
for
do
that.
that?
I've been asking myself that lately because there's a growing feeling in me like that's what it takes.
That's where it is.
Yeah.
Why don't we ask? Why don't we ask for that to be truth, for that to come to us? What is there that keeps us from asking?
Still some
What
investment.
else could it be,
Still some investment in separation.
except our fear of what we were going to find?
Or what we might lose.
I'll ask for anything as long as I know what's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how willing am I to ask for something that I don't know?
I asked on that trip to feel the presence of God. That was what I was asking for when I went.
Could you have asked just as easily, honey, to feel the presence of your God self?
Somebody earlier said here, I don't know who in the group said it, but I wrote it down. I don't have to do anything. I just have to show up. And that means an awful lot to me in the sense that all there is love. All there is God. All there is good. And I don't have to do anything. Just show up.
The very first time that I was contemplating, I had been invited to do a sharing with a big group. And I was petrified. I felt perfectly comfortable in going inside and envisioning brothers sitting in the garden on a bench and looking into his eyes and saying whatever came. But I was absolutely petrified to show or to attend this gathering and just share from my own awareness. So I kept asking brother, what should I do? What should I do? Finally, one day he said, do you trust me? And I said, implicitly. And he said, then be with me and together we'll just show up.
That's right along with the first question. Is this, am I willing Do I have what it takes? Am I willing to
Yes.
turn to Jesus, to the Holy Spirit, to that Christ within at every turn? Every turn. Not just make decisions for myself, but really go inside and ask, what now? What here? This is what seems to be up. Please, some guidance. What would you have me do? What would you have, help me to see this. I feel conflicted. Help me to see and understand, like really asking at every single turn. I don't do that.
No,
And there's
that's
the
true.
opportunity to. There's the
That's true.
opportunity to. And that is so beautiful. So did you go to the group and do it this way?
I did.
And
Linda can probably tell you he's better than I. First I did the channeling business. And then I said, no, I'm getting ahead of my story. This fellow that had invited me to come also channeled Jesus. So he did his channeling thing. So I sat there, and he was finished, and he said, okay, go ahead, do your thing. And I went through my little dance of seeing him on the bench in our garden, me on the grass, looking into his eyes, waiting for him to speak, and he said nothing. There was nothing coming. And I thought, oh God, this is such an embarrassing time. And I said, please say something in my mind. Please say something. And he said, come sit beside me.
And that was it?
instead of being down
That
on
was
the
it.
on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting because I imagine that's what he said to you before you said that. I said, oh, he wants him to come sit next to him, not down on the ground.
Yeah, and from
That is
that point
beautiful.
on, from that point on, everything that came not with my thinking that I was channeling him, but that it was coming from, through, and part of my God self. And that's the point that I'm trying to make. We all do that, but rarely do we allow ourselves to acknowledge that's what we do.
I think, Tom, that's one of the most profound things you've ever said in here is about telling that story about Jesus telling you to sit up on the bench. I have quoted that many, many times in other groups because we tend to think that Jesus or Buddha or whoever is higher than we are. And to me, that was just a really deep teaching. But he's the same as we are, and he wants us to know that.
Yeah, I can't tell you, Brian. That's the highlight of my whole experience with him. Everything, because of the experience from that day on, changed completely. There was never a sense of him and me. For a long time, there was a sense of us, but in a way that allowed me to associate with the God self. So, what does it take to allow you to admit that you are that God self? Do you want to? Do you really want to? That's a hard question to answer for me.
It's easy to answer on the conscious level, but to really get down deep inside, who I really am, do I really want to say that there, and believe it at that level.
Now, let me point out something. The reason this is so important is because if we are to move into this so-called awakened state, and if we are able to put ourselves in the position of our real self, that we become self that is not looking to awaken, but the self that acknowledges it's being awake. If we're to do all of that, none of it is going to happen until we answer that key, most crucial of all questions. Do I want it? Nothing is going to come to us that we don't want. Nothing is going to come to us that we are ambivalent about. So it's going to take a conscious commitment to acknowledging that is what I want, to the exclusion of all else. That's what I want.
It's been my experience that you'll ask, and just for your answer, you'll ask, do you want this?
Say again.
He will ask if I want this before anything happens. And depending on my answer, it may or may not happen.
There's an interesting experience, and I think I've shared this before, that there was this former Catholic priest who had a great success in healing folks, and he was closely associated with John of God from Brazil, that I think most people have heard about. He's done some wondrous healings. And what Father Roth, who has since passed, shared with us is that it's really kind of a simple process where you don't really do anything. You just are aware of the presence, and we talk about God's self, or the Holy Spirit, or my being. We don't really have to ask for anything, but if we're in that presence every moment, in other words, the power of now that he wrote about, if we can be aware of who we really are every moment, we really don't have to ask for anything, because once that happens, the mind is healed and the body will follow. And again, I personally experienced healings of 4 different diseases that were present at that time, but he made me believe this. And John of God from Brazil is sort of on the same path, and we've talked about it right here, that when we are aware of who we really are every moment, it just falls into place. And that's kind of what I've experienced, and to this very day I have not had a recurrence of any of those maladies, because I try to do that, and when I'm aware that I'm in my head, in my ego, in not being, worrying about the past, future, that's when it invariably hits the fan. So to me, it's really a simple.
Dan, which self are you describing now? Are you describing the body self?
No, the God self.
The God self?
The God self. I don't. Again, the Holy Spirit, the being who I really am, and we can get in touch with that if we just are aware of the energy that's within us. Ron was an energy, what he would call an energy healer. Those of us who eventually became aware of the energy that our God self is, everything around us is all energy. And therein lies the healing. I've seen,
Could you-
he healed thousands of people over the years, and basically I think, that's how he would meditate for hours, and he would say he was in touch with the divine. And that meant that he knew when he was meditating, there were no thoughts. If a thought came, he would, it's just like a bird flying by, he would let it go. But he would meditate for hours, and he would come to us. I attended several of his events, and he would come to, he could tell me exactly what was wrong. He had that ability, and that came from God or his true being, which he was in touch with. So I see that as that manifestation as a pretty profound proof. I mean, when I went to the first event, I thought, God, what's going on here? And I'm not BSing here. There were flashes of light. The heat went up in the room, and I'm going, what have I gotten myself into here? It just freaked me out at first. But then I saw these people get up out of their wheelchairs and throw their crutches away, and I'm going, wow, So that was kind of pretty profound, I'm the kind of guy who needed proof. I want to see something from all this, and then I'm watching all this over months. And so, I had hearing problems, I had all kinds of crap going on, stress and all kind of stuff. Why can't this happen to me? I'm here, I want to heal too. And about that time, bang, things started to happen. And to this day, that's been, I think that was when I retired from the fire department 20 years ago. And I still have not had, any further recurrences of some pretty serious stuff. We're talking cancer and Crohn's and hearing issues, back, the whole schmear, and I don't have it. So that was pretty, and again, it's just a matter of getting in touch with my, we call it God self, or the Holy Spirit, or energy of God, or whatever you want to call it. He made a believer out of me, and therein I was healed. That's it.
I'd like to share a story with you, Dan. I don't mean to discount anything you're saying. Just sharing a story with you. The first time I discovered that I had COPD, I asked Brother if he would facilitate a healing of my body. And he said something that has been hard for me to accept. But he said, to associate the word healing with the body is an oxymoron.
Sure. That's true. And I know that I'm going to die, my body's going to die someday. And so therefore, I'm probably going to get some kind of malady or whatever. I'm not going to just check out. I'd love to, one day. But again, it wasn't I asked for a physical healing. At that point, I think my mind went from being a constant worrier, stressed out, to believing that this was possible. And I was so thankful that I met this particular person at this time, because, by being cured of these issues, it gave me more time to go through the process of awakening. I'm certainly still not awakened, but it gave me another chance to get there. So that's why for me, it's what I needed. I mean, some people might not need a physical healing, but it's what I needed at that time. So here I got it.
I would recommend for all of us that we go to the end of the text, end of chapter, 31, whatever it is, and read the last section. In fact, let's do that. Let's do that. No, this is
Is this the one we read when Robert was here?
chapter 31.
Yeah, on page 669.
So, yeah, right?
It's beautiful.
And that's the last,
Yeah, 69. So beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chapter 69.
Is that the end of the text?
Okay.
Do you want one page before that, Tom?
No, I'm just trying to find
On choose once again?
the statement that he makes, which is in here. If you've read it recently, you'll recall it. What he says is, you will see the flesh, or you will see the spirit. And which you choose to see will determine who you think you are. And so when I choose to see my body, I'm going to choose to see something that in my ego's perception needs to be healed. Because the body will always be imperfect. It is the means for our imperfection, which is the opposite of what's true. So I always have to bring myself back to the awareness. When I ask for a physical healing, when I ask that I not have another stroke, all I am saying is I hope, I wish, I pray, I value this form more than the truth about me.
You're believing in the body.
I am believing in, I am seeing the flesh and not the spirit.
The spirit. The spirit's perfect.
And taking that back to where we began this discussion, seeing that, being in that place, I will never be able to find the truth of myself. Because I'm coming from a point of view where there is no truth. There is no truth in the reality of the form.
There's someone like 160,000 Buddhist monks who have gone through this process probably from the time they were babies, or not babies, but young adults who have studied with these masters. I mean, they don't get sick and die. They're just sitting there one day and they're no longer there. So they didn't have to get sick and die. It's not a birth and death thing for them, because they truly believe in living in the present moment and being aware by every moment of the being that they really are. So, yeah, I mean, they don't live about the body, but the evidence is there that birth and death don't have to happen.
No, I agree entirely.
Yeah,
In fact, our consciousness now, as I've said this before, our consciousness really is in the process of trying to decide whether or not to maintain death as an idea of our story. That's exciting. That's exciting, because suddenly we're bearing ourselves into what really causes the separation. It's not the body. That's a symbol. But what really causes the separation? When we acknowledge, do this for yourself, because if you have anything akin to experiences I've had, believe me, it's an adventure. Take yourself to a very nice meditative state and ask yourself if you are willing not to die. That seems like such a stupid question, but do that. Am I willing not to die?
So who would the I be that you're referring to?
That's one of the places you come to, Raj. That's one of the places you have to go to.
Yeah.
Don't we have to let go of that I completely? I mean, that's what we're trying to do here is get rid of the blocks
To the awareness.
that are keeping us
Yes.
in the life and death thing. If we can truly let go of all of that conditioning, truly let go of it, which means letting go of the self, the false self. I just say there is no self. The only self is the false self. The rest of it is our true being, the life that we are. So if we can let go of those things, and yeah, a lot of people meditate for hours. And my master says that you don't need to do that. You just need to be in that present moment state every moment. That's meditation. That's what true meditation is.
The first time I did this, I brought the question into my mind, am I willing not to die? And I found myself sitting there weighing my options.
Flip a coin.
And that was the most asinine thing I could imagine. Because the answer should have been so pathetically obvious. But I wasn't. It wasn't obvious to me. And so I asked Brother, I said, why is this not an obvious question or an answer for me to have? And he said, consider who it is that's asking.
It seems like either way,
That's
that
profound.
there's not all that much to worry about, because from the spiritual point of view, death is an illusion, which is a nothing. From
don't
the
even know.
egoic point of view, the mind is nothing more than the functioning of the brain, and when it stops, it's like going to sleep, and nobody worries about going to sleep. So what's there to worry about?
See, I see my ego response when I just go there. Because what I hear from you is an invitation to go directly there, to be experiential, to get out of the head with it all.
And you can't
And
go
to
there.
go right there to
You can't go there
to
with the
see
character
what
in your
comes.
story.
To see, yeah, so I'm going there and I'm asking the question, and that's what comes is what I can see is concern then about this kind of way of dying, or this kind of illness, or this kind of, I could see that story come up. And so when I see that, I have to come back honestly and say, there's some part of me that's not willing to not die. There's something there, and it's the ego. It's the ego doesn't want to die.
It's the most.
It doesn't want to.
Again,
It doesn't
it's
want to
most-
not die. It wants to do the story.
It's very we associate ourselves as being the character in the story we're telling. That's who we think we are. Mm-hmm. That was the character that I took into meditation. I was meditating from the point of view that there was something wrong with me, that I was born to die. And I was wondering, associating myself with that character, I was wondering why it was so difficult to answer the question, am I willing not to die? My goodness.
Well, if there's a fear of death, where does that fear come from?
From this character that made the story of death.
Why would he be afraid?
Why would he be afraid? Because he's a dumbass.
Explain that a little bit further.
Yes.
You need to.
I don't think he needs any explanation.
Yes, that's
What a dumbass. Meditate on that.
When I had my physical over here, well, I have a new doctor now here in Port Ludlow. And she said to me, after she looked at my history and everything, and she says, I think you're going to live until you're triple digits, if you want to.
Right, righty.
Right.
You must have the same doctor I did.
Another way to look at death is to look at the alternative from the other point of view and living too long. Yes.
Well, if you do this meditation I was suggesting for you, you'll begin to come up with all kinds of reasons, all kinds of good reasons to die. Not to be willing to just carte blanche let death go. Because you see that it literally has nothing to do with the body. But it's the surrender of your whole entire belief system.
Yeah.
It's your surrendering your separation is what it is.
It ultimately is exactly that, Jim.
I gotta say that in my profession, seeing as much death as I have, I really never have been afraid to die, although there have been times when I really wanted to, because I was just miserable as hell, you know. But I'm so thankful now that the body was allowed to get through some of this stuff, because it's given me the opportunity to let go of all of that fear that I do sometimes experience.
You see, it's going to be entirely different, though, Dan. By deciding that I am willing not to die, I'm not protecting the body, but I'm also not valuing it. So I can come and go. I can be in the body or I can not be in the body. It's irrelevant.
Yeah. I like I said, I'm not concerned about it, but I'm just so grateful that I've had the opportunity to do this and not go, try to get to where I don't have to go through this again. I don't want to do this again. It ain't been any fun.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I think my body-mind often plays with that idea as well.
Your what?
My body-mind, my ego plays with that idea. Of wanting to leave this place. Like what came to me when you said you were doing the meditation. Am I willing to not die, essentially? And there were a few things. Like one answer was immediately like, of course, I don't want to die. I want to live forever, in the body or whatnot. And then there was like a follow-up, which was like, really? Do you? I mean, it's not. You've been through some bad things. Like maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe oblivion would be preferable, just not to exist at all. And so it's like this little dance.
That's the only thing that's not an option.
Yeah. And so it's like, and I just think that, until I give up that whole dance of like, you know, wanting to hold on to the body or wanting it not to be there. It's still just part of the game. I feel like not wanting to be here is kind of would keep me here in a way, because
Why don't we just change
it's
it?
still playing with it.
Why don't we just change it? We made it.
Yeah. Why don't we just change the body?
Whatever it is that we don't like.
Yeah. Well, because we think we're separate from what we make.
So are you talking about making a better world or getting out of the world?
The Course refers to it as the real world.
I think
Do you know who made the real world?
I'm sorry?
Do you know who made the real world?
Jesus?
Your God self.
Mine.
Yours. And mine.
He gives. I did that.
And mine. But what I'm saying, bye honey.
See you next week with Scotch. So you better be here.
I kid you not, that's one of the best scotches in the world. Brother just asked me why I was such an expert.
Why are you such an
or why you
expert?
think you are.
Why are you such an
You know,
expert?
Maybe we'd
he
better
said,
have
why are you holding yourself out to be such an expert?
Oh, the scotch?
On Scotch.
I'll tell you another story. Because I was about to say something here and it could have gotten me in trouble. We were doing a gathering in Alaska, and at the time I smoked. And it was in a church. So I was standing just outside the back door of the church, having a smoke before the gathering began. And this elderly lady, probably my age now, walked in the door and looked at me, gave me a glare, and shook her head and walked on past. So we went, and she sat in the front row. So we went through the whole gathering, and just about the time everybody ran out of questions, I said, her name was Alice, and I said, but Alice, you still have a question. And she said, well, I do. I said, okay, what is it? She said, well, if you really channel Jesus, why do you smoke? I said, I don't smoke. She said, I saw you standing right outside the door. I said, no. That was Jesus. I was channeling it for him. I was about to say the same thing to him about the scotch.
Oh my God.
It sounds like there's a lot of humor that comes from Jesus in your
Oh, yeah.
dialogue. You can tell a joke as such.
And
There's supposed to be one in the Bible, I understand,
he has always come to me
with funny things.
great humor.
Me too. And
Use the humor to teach me.
In the book Conversations
Yeah.
with God,
Yeah.
he says to Neil Walsh, do you think I don't have any humor? I invented humor.
That's good, yeah.
I think I love those places in experience that show me how love, how truth is using its messages, like those messages from Brother. To me, I call him just Jesus or Master. I call him Master, but uses even those moments where they're filled with pain experientially for us, and with humor to flash the reality of things, the real truth of the situation. And that what comes through is that sense of life or no life, like living, like I'm either living or I'm kind of dead to what I am, because I am that. And so, but one example is one time I was really going through it in myself, really beating myself up about being judgmental. And this was a phase, I think I've probably shared a couple other stories about the same phase period of my life. And to the point of tears. And I was laying in bed and I was just like, started talking to it's a different one. Started talking to Jesus about it, and was really like, I just really need help. I'm just still so judgmental. I mean, all this work, all this time, since I was a teenager, just working at it. This was maybe, 10 years ago, maybe more. And I just was crying and just feeling so upset. And so, like I still have so much just angst and judgment and, sharpness in me or whatever. And finally, I got this really strong sense of it, just in my whole being, just had this really strong sense of it. And finally, he just goes, hey. And he shows me, and I see this whole image of him going into the temple and just trashing all the money changing table. I mean, just like in an absolute rage, just like you see, worse than you see in the movies. I mean, just going at it, He says, hey, everybody has a bad day. And I laugh, cry. Oh my God, it was so compassionate, because there was so much compassion there. And it was like, was he really full of rage and doing all that? I don't know. It didn't matter. It's that he used it. He knew it was something I could relate to, and used it to immediately. I was dying. I was killing myself. I was just death itself. And he immediately was like, "Wake up!" Boom, and it worked. It worked.
You hit on something that's so great. And just God, when I was just kind of starting on this whole path, somebody gave me one of Gary Renard's CDs, and I think it was the first one he ever came out with. I can't even remember the name of it now, but it's how he said that everyone is given their own helpers. Just like you have brother. He had Arden and Persa, and that's how he wrote Disappearance of the Universe, which helped me to begin to understand this. But the thing that attracted me to him, he was such a smart ass. And I've been a smart ass my whole life. That's my defense mechanism. Getting into somebody's ass about something. I would light up, because it was so funny. I just love it, even if it was at their expense. So I was attracted to him immediately, because he could have been my brother, because he was a smart ass, just like me. So from there, he was who I needed to go on and on to this and this, because it's just been a chain of events. And that's what led me to Ron Ross in Costco. I picked up one of his tapes at that time. But it's what I personally needed at that time for my path. And just like every one of us in here has their own helpers, their helping spirits or helping beings, whatever you want to call it, to help us along the way. No two of us, none of us are going to be on the same path necessarily, but we're all going to wake up, yeah.
I think if anybody looked back in their life, you could find certain situations that happened that turned your direction.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear to me today, but it wasn't what had happened.
No.
But looking back at it, I could say, well, yeah, if I hadn't met that guy, I wouldn't have wound up in Unity Church. If I hadn't wound up in Unity Church, I'd have never wound up with the Course in Miracles. You know, if I hadn't wound up with the Course in Miracles, I wouldn't be sitting here. If I hadn't moved to Port Ludlow, I wouldn't be sitting here. I never had any intention of moving to Port Ludlow. It just happened.
Yeah,
The script is written.
that sense of being on the perfect path is a very interesting thing, and I find that the older that I get, the more I can see that or recognize it or believe in it. It's kind of intriguing because it's been one hell of a tough path.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I needed the healing that I experienced.
Yeah.
Somebody else might not.
Mhm.
So be it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I can't sit here and tell you you ought to do this because I did this. That's crap.
Speaking of healing, 40 years ago, I was at the end of my alcoholism, and it was killing me. And I didn't have a clue until one night I had a nightmare, I thought, and I saw this figure walking on sand for miles and miles and miles and miles. And I was way up there, and I was looking down, and I said to myself, I said, I wonder who that is. And he said, that is you without a mind for an eternity. I thought, wow, okay, you know, that really got my attention. And then it went on. Every night I would get a different dream, and it got to the point to where I was real nervous about going to sleep at night. I mean nervous. And I say, wonder what's going to happen tonight. Well, I found out, of course, he showed, I went through a complete personality rehab. Not because of anything I did, but I went through it anyway. The second night, he told me that, or somebody did, that there was a killer loose and your children are outside. And I opened the door, and I says, my kids are outside, so I gotta go get them. I opened the door, and somebody got me right in the chest. And it hurt, and I screamed because it was real. And so I said, well, after, you know, there wasn't much I could do about it or say. I said, save me. And that's the words he was waiting for, I guess, was save me. And he said, will you dedicate your life to Alcoholics Anonymous? And I said, yes. And then he left. Well, he said, then pray after that. And then the next day, my rehab started for real. I would be doing things, and I didn't realize that he'd been with me my whole life. He knew more about me than I did. And that was disconcerting in itself because he had a sense of humor also, as we know. I said, well, I don't have a job. And he says, well, the dream said, call this guy. And I didn't want to call him because he was on the other side over in San Francisco, and I was in the Bay. And I didn't want to do it. Wrong thing. All of a sudden, I had to go to a meeting, and I had to reach for a piece of paper that was covered by the phone. And so I reached, and the phone rang and said, come on over for the interview. And I said, oh, thanks. Scared the heck out of me to boot. But I went over, and I got the job, and it was just, for me, everything was supposed to be permanent, but this was just temporary. And because after that one, I was out on my own, and I found out I don't know what's good for myself. because I would think I liked that job terrifically, and then it would disappear while somebody else got the job. And I'd say, okay, thanks. I thought I was perfect for that job. Well, that went on for quite a while, and I finally got one that that was good for me, and I didn't choose it. I just went over to the Presidio and showed up, and they said, "Yeah, you've got the job." I said, "Don't I need an interview?" They says, "No, you're qualified." I said, "Oh, okay." So, but it was still, everything was temporary, and I had a hard time keeping up with the temporariness of everything. I wanted it in black and white, and I'll be here for umpteen years. No, not at all. I was single, and I had no job, and even with the singleness, I would have a date, and if it wasn't someone that was good for me, something would happen to my car. And it never failed.
Last week.
He's got a sense of humor.
I was supposed to be here.
I mean, he really does. Finally, I saw what was happening, and I'd go up and I'd say, okay, let's see how this turns out. Because if I didn't, my back tire would hit the curb, or the lady that was parking in front of me would hit my headlight. You name it, And then, so I looked at the poor car. It says, "You're going to catch it." Sometimes I didn't even have a car; it would quit, and I'd have to figure out myself what I was going to do. And but anyway, that's neither here nor there. But it made for a very, and still does make for a very interesting life on my part. Not too much for other people, but it really opened my eyes, and I am really willing to look forward to death. How else am I going to find it? It's nothing that I care about or in promoting.
Did God create death?
I don't think so. I think we do it.
Yeah. So it's kind of hard for me to look forward to it.
Yeah.
There's something I'm missing. And that's what I'm suggesting if you all do this meditation process. We'll help one another find out what it is that we're really after and what it is that we're really avoiding.
Aren't we all, whether we know it or not, aren't we all really after knowing that we're one and that we are?
Yes.
Yeah.
But we don't know that.
Not consciously, not by the way we act sometimes, but...
Not here, not now.
Yeah, but in our heart of hearts, that's really the only thing that we want, right?
Yes.
As long as it's not today.
Yeah. Brother said that one of the very first things I can recall him saying to me was, one thing you can always be sure of, everyone, always wants to know that they are loved.
Yes.
That's the one constant we can depend on.
So no one's desires are different from our own.
We're part of the one consciousness.
There is no one else to have different desires, I guess.
Well, to me, as to the question of death, the answer that comes to me to be basically irrefutable is that, God's mind doesn't stop or go to sleep, and it encompasses everything that's real. So how is he going to forget us? So that kind of, at least from a logic standpoint, that simply answers the question.
We're,
Yeah.
I don't think we're ever forgotten.
Yeah.
It's just our own conditioning that allows us to. Our conditioning, as long as we're in the bubble here in the ego, we're going to have to deal with karma and all that other stuff, even though we may not. The only way there are certain things that happen is that we're paying off, I think. But as long as we're in our ego self, that's going to happen. That's why death is still something we're afraid of.
Is there one way out of this story? I think there is. I think there's only one way.
Atonement.
No, you tell me next week.
I'm sorry?
You tell me next week.
Oh, is that our,
Yeah,
Well,
is that our-
there's only one way.
is that our lesson for the
If you do the
week?
meditation,
Think
I
about
was-
that.
If you do the meditation, I was suggesting the answer will
Oh,
be obvious.
And the meditation is on whether or not
we
I am
were
willing
We're
not to
willing.
die.
willing to die.
I'm willing not
Not
to
to
die.
die.
Willing not to die.
I am willing.
Not to die.
Am I willing
Yes.
not to die?
Am I willing to?
Sounds good to me.
That sounds pretty good.
I was reminded of a story that Jim Dorsey, Sam's buddy of mine, liked to tell about the Skid Road wino who had his bottle in a brown paper bag. He takes a big swig and says, "God, please help me not to drink." And he puts the bottle in his pocket. He had one of those coats where you can reach through the pocket. The bottle falls down on the sidewalk and breaks, and he looks up and he says, "Not so fast!"
Well, there was another guy presented with the same dilemma. He's going on this hike all by himself, and he comes, and this pathway is falling along on the cliff. Somebody can heard it. And he trips on a rock, and he falls over the edge, and on the way down, he grabs this branch and hanging on. Looks up to heaven and said, "What can I do?" And a voice comes out of heaven and says, "Let go." See, that's the dilemma. Let go. And he thinks about it for just a moment. He looks up again and says, "Is there anybody else up there?" I imagine most of you heard that. That's an old joke, but I love it.